Good evening and happy Wednesday to you. Welcome everyone to Open Mic, Open Site, a program of the collaborative community. My name is Kyla Williams Tate, and I am the founder of the collaborative community. And I am so glad that you are here with us tonight. Tonight's theme is dreamscapes and fantasies, and I'm super excited to talk about that. And even though we don't have any featured guests for this evening, I thought it would be wonderful for us to just have a conversation, right? We need some good conversation these days. At least that's what I'm feeling with everything that's been floating around us and all those other conversations that are happening. They are a bit tiring and certainly making people feel anxious and exhausted. And so I thought that this would be an amazing opportunity for us to use our imaginations themselves and let them be the featured artists for tonight. And certainly, we'll be talking about some artists who occupy the Dreamscapes and Fantasies space, but wanted to spend some time with y'all as the audience. I was sharing with our super producer, Jordan, that this is our sixth open mic, open site. So we've done six of these episodes, and I'm proud of that. The collaborative community is growing. We are showing up in other places and spaces, and that is bringing me a lot of joy. So thanks to all the professional organizations who have reached out and are using collaborative community artists in their professional spaces to open meetings, to appear at conferences. We are thankful for those opportunities. And certainly every Wednesday, not every Wednesday, the last Wednesday, excuse me, of every month is 6 p.m. Central. You can find us here on the Collaborative Community YouTube page live, as well as my LinkedIn page live, and maybe Instagram soon. We'll see. Talking about all things art, showcasing it virtually, and using its power to help transform the spirit, transform our places and spaces, and just have something to look forward to. I love ending my day on these last Wednesdays talking about art and spotlighting artists. So has brought me a lot of joy, and we need more joy today and in the days to come. So as we talk about dreamscapes and fantasies, I wanted to provide a little bit of definition for you to consume. So Cambridge defines dreamscapes as a view or image that is or looks like something seen in a dream or a work of art that represents this. So when you are having a dream and it's super vivid, and I'm a big vivid dreamer, especially if I'm really tired. I dream really vivid in bright colors, and there's always uh, very intricate background scenes, and those are like dreamscapes. It feels very much like real life, like something that could actually be happening, but is actually something that's happening in your subconscious. Now, psychology today defines fantasies as imaginary, daydream like scenarios that individuals play out in their heads, whether conscious or unconscious. Fantasies serve several psychological purposes and are a normal part of most people's interior world. Now, I'm a big daydreamer too, right? Now I love my job and I love all of the things that I do, and this the collaborative community, doing my fellowship with Benton, and other fellowships to come in the near future. I love working in digital equity and championing that work on behalf of the county that I serve. But often I find myself sitting and daydreaming into space, thinking about if I won the Mega Million or the Powerball. Now that is a fantasy of mine. Like, what would I do? What would I do with all that money? How many people would I be able to help? How many trips would I be able to take? How much of this mortgage would I be able to pay off? That's a big fantasy of mine, is having the income, having the revenue to be able to change not only my life, but the people lives that I love and respect, because I would certainly be really philanthropic too. I can see myself giving a lot of money away. And I think, what is Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott? She has been super philanthropic in her divorce settlement, and that's been helpful to a lot of people. And that's a fantasy of mine. I want to be helpful to people, and certainly I'm doing that in the best ways that I can with the resources that I do have. But if I had that lottery money, some of y'all would be getting some grants right away for sure. So I wrote a poem of sorts to move dreamscapes and fantasies into frame, I guess. So dreamscapes are more than escapes. They're reflections of what we long for or fear or dare to imagine. And fantasies stretch the limits of what's possible. But I don't know what's possible. Maybe what's possible is that I need to win the lottery, but we'll see. But fantasies stretch the limits of what's possible and ask us to think differently about the world that we live in. So the little poem that I wrote, very short and rather incomplete, but it was just something I thought about today as I was riding the train and daydreaming about my day and things I was looking forward to in the day. So I wrote, in dreams, the walls melt into water, because I love water. I'm a Pisces and I love being around water. Time slows like honey slipping from a spoon. I walk on streets paved with memory, where ancestors hum lullabies into the night air. Fantasies are not foolishness. They are blueprints stitched in starlight, whispers of what could be, daring us to live beyond the edges of what is. And that poem just really inspired me to present this information today. I couldn't wait till we got to this moment. So I hope that folks who will be joining us later and or watching us later will find some value in this opportunity of sharing. So, as we talk about dreamscapes and fantasies, I want to share a dream story that I have um, as part of my personal story bank. So, my mother tells a story all the time about me being a young child, under one. I learned to walk pretty early, was potty trained pretty early, had a lot of early development things happening for me when I was a young child, according to my mother. Um, and the old wise tale says that when you have a child that is developmentally mature in that way, is because they're getting out the way because another baby is coming. And certainly a year later, my little brother made his entrance into the world. But my mom said when I was a young baby, under one, I used to pull myself up in the crib and just be talking all the time. I'm an early riser, so I've always gotten up earlier than anyone in my home, in my immediate family, anyone in my home, in my current family. I'm up pretty early. And my mother said I used to just be up and not crying, and not crying or reaching out for her, but just up, standing in my crib, having a very intense conversation and laughing and giggling. And she used to wake up and say, who are you talking to? And I didn't have all of the language and the words, certainly at that young of age. But she said that continued for a long time, and then it stopped. And she used to just say, I don't know who you was talking to, but you used to just be talking. So, a backstory. I've only had one grandparent my whole life, my maternal grandmother, but I knew about my dad's mother and father. and I'll share a picture of them. Right now, my paternal grandparents. This is my grandfather, John Williams, and my grandmother, Hasseltine Williams. And I knew about my grandparents, but I didn't know them because unfortunately they passed away when my father was young. He lost his father when he was 9 and lost his mother just 2 years later, when he was 11. So I never met them. And my father never really talked about his parents. So I knew that they had passed away when he was younger, but there was never any pictures up in the house. There was never really any conversations about them. We knew their names, and me and my cousins were aware that they existed, certainly, but we never really saw pictures of them. I couldn't have put a face, with the name, but my dad had a heart attack, unfortunately. He didn't pass away, but he was certainly really ill. And after recovering from that heart attack, he wanted me to know about his parents, his more about that portion of the family history. And I think, being that close to death brought, um, a urgency maybe with him to share that story with me. And he showed me this picture. Now, I was in college when my father had a heart attack, and I had never seen a picture of my grandparents, never until that moment. And when he showed me this picture, I screamed. And he said, "What's wrong?" He thought maybe just seeing their picture after, knowing that they existed and, just kind of taking it all in, he mistook my emotion for just like shock and sadness or joy. And I screamed because I told him, I said, "Hey, remember the story that mom used to say about me being a baby in the crib talking to someone? I used to talk to this woman. This is the woman I was talking to when I was younger." Again, I couldn't tell anybody or formulate that, but that picture was ingrained in my brain of this woman that I used to have these babbling conversations with. And so I screamed because I recognized her instantly. And he just looked at me with tears in his eyes and he was like, "You were talking to my mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know I was talking to." I'm not, and it's hard. And when I tell people this, they're like, "Maybe this was just a dream. Maybe it was just a fantasy. Maybe you just wanted to know. Maybe you saw this picture someplace else and that's how it was familiar to you." And I'm like, "No, I know that this is the person that I was talking to." So then, folks get all creeped out and like she was a ghost and all these other things. And so I don't know that I can explain, why I knew her or why I felt like this was the person that I used to talk to when I was a little babbling baby. But even just the thought of being able to be connected to my grandmother in some way in my lifetime was a beautiful dream. It was a beautiful fantasy. It's a beautiful story that I hold in my heart. And because of the theme of tonight's, episode, I wanted to share that beautiful dreamscape, that beautiful fantasy with you. So I've never told that story to anyone outside of my family. So I'm really interested to hear back from you if you have had some similar experience or have heard of some similar experience. But rest in paradise to my grandparents, John and Hasseltine Williams. So, sharing about Hasseltine reminds me that our personal stories are dreamscapes in their own right. They shape how we see the world and how we imagine what's possible. Now, artists do the same thing, and this is our sixth episode of Open Mic, Open Site. So, you've heard, if you've been watching or listening, you've heard from many artists sharing many things around how they imagine the world and using their voice in some artistic way and some artistic medium. So artists do the same thing. They build entire landscapes out of paint, shadow, or animation or stories. So in this next segment, I want to take us through the dream worlds of three artists that I think really embody the dreamscapes and fantasies theme that we're talking about tonight. Our first artist is Salvador Dali. So let me tell you a little bit about Salvador Dali. Now, if you've seen a picture of Salvador Dali, he's pretty recognizable because he had that really thin mustache that kind of pointed up. And, you can really recognize his face. His face was super interesting and artistic as well. So, Salvador Dali was one of the most recognizable surrealists of the 20th century. His paintings, especially the persistence of memory with its melting clocks, invite us into a world where time bends, logic dissolves, and the impossible suddenly feels possible. Dali believed dreams could reveal truths that reality hides. So when you step into his work, you step into this strange yet familiar language of the subconscious. And we have a short video to play about Dali so that we can learn more together.
Let's learn about Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali is one of the most famous Spanish artists of all time and is considered by many to be one of the most important artists in the development of a style of art called Surrealism. Surrealism was a style of art and literature which is sometimes described as strange and dreamlike. Dali was born in 1904 in the town of Figueras, Spain, and quickly grew to be a talented artist even as a child. By 21 years old, Salvador Dali had his first solo exhibition showing his artworks at a very influential gallery called Galeria Dalmau. He became known for his highly skilled painting and draftsmanship, but especially for his surrealist ideas. The weirder the thought or the more bizarre ways Dali could put objects together, the better. Once, he designed a lobster telephone. Another time, he painted elephants with long, skinny legs. Salvador Dali made a sculpture with an ear where the nose belongs. He was an extremely talented painter who influenced the ways artists, architects, fashion designers, and musicians thought about their own work. He would often fall asleep with a teacup in his hand and wake himself up and draw whatever he saw in his dreams. He painted melted watches, ants, eggs, and sea urchins often. He painted and drew landscapes of his beach town home in Cadaqués, Spain. A landscape is a painting or drawing of nature such as mountains, beaches, rivers, and valleys. He created theater sets and even designed a line of jewelry. Salvador Dali was a man who created so many forms of art and even included science into his artworks. One of Salvador Dali's most famous paintings was created in 1932 and is called Persistence of Memory. It's a small painting of melting clocks which hangs in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. When Dali was an older man, he spent much of his time building and then living in a theater in his hometown of Figueras, Spain. He turned the theater into his own personal museum, then moved into it to live. The museum is called Teatro Dali, and it is full of strange paintings, sculptures, murals, tapestries, and furniture that the artist designed. Dali died in 1989 at the age of 84 and is buried at his theater in Figueras. His artworks can be seen in major museums like the Art Institute of Chicago, Die Pinakotheken in Munich, Germany, the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., as well as museums dedicated to his works in St. Petersburg, Florida, his theater in Figueras, and his home in Portugal, near Cadaqués in Spain. Salvador Dali was an artist whose unusual view of the world continues to inspire, causing the public to become confused and yet delighted by his very surreal imagination. Comic Kids is a nonprofit helping children in the community learn art through comics, cartoons, and books. To learn more, see our website at comickids.org and follow us on Instagram.
Shout out to Comic Kids for that wonderful video. And although most of the folks that are watching this are probably not children, I thought it was a perfect video to share about Salvador Dali. And Dali reminds us that dreamscapes don't have to make sense to be meaningful. They give us permission to sit with mystery, which I love. But not all dreamscapes are whimsical. Some are haunting, shaped by history, which brings us to the next artist. So Kara Walker is a contemporary artist known for her bold Black silhouettes that tell stories of race, gender, power, and history. At first glance, her work looks like a fantasy. Shadow puppets frozen on gallery walls. But when you look closer, you see the brutality and contradictions of America's past. Walker's dreamscapes are nightmares made visible, forcing us to reckon with the fantasies this country once told about itself. I am a big fan of Kara Walker's work and have been following it for a long time. And I'm so happy to share Kara Walker with you, the Open Mic, Open Site audience. Let's play a short video and learn a little bit more about Kara Walker.
I'm Kara Walker, and my new commission for SF MoMA is called Fortuna and the Immortality Garden Machine. How a lot of my work arises is that I kind of get an interest and I do a little bit of research and I start trying to figure out how it connects with my thoughts about, having a Black body and its abstractions as they've been concocted through colonial exploits and through chattel slavery and the attempts over decades and centuries of trying to reclaim our humanity from the power narratives that have destroyed it or mechanized that body. But without really realizing it at the time, I was just thinking about the cyborg nature of having a Black body in the first place. The project really came about when I got COVID. I had already been thinking about illness and death and stasis that we all encountered during these long months of lockdown and quarantine. And it really became a creative exercise for me. Like, what does it mean to have a body if I can extend it with media? If everything that I am mediating my life with is contained on a single screen, where does the soul live became one of the questions. Will the viewer encounter a kind of mechanical wonderland, a kind of circus-like atmosphere, but a circus-like atmosphere of automata? I was thinking of them as the prototypes for a whole new group of humanoid cyborgs. They're all portraits of archetypal figures that will populate the centerpiece of the garden at SF MoMA. I began working with unfired, air-dry clay. I just started trying to figure out who these characters might be. And they took on different sorts of forms, some familiar, some unfamiliar. And from there, we made a 3D scan of each one. So those 3D scans could be used to make bronzes or CNC cutouts, whatever we want. Over the course of the last months, we've gotten a few test prints, and I thought, maybe it's as simple as a version of paper mache, which just changes the surface enough and brings my hand back into the final stages of the process, because it is a piece where it goes from the hand to the machine back to the hand a couple of times. And with my treating the bodies or the heads, whatever parts might be exposed, with tissue paper or Gampi paper, a little bit of gold leaf in places, just a few little handmade elements, I think, brings it some vitality or some life that I think is important. In the Roberts Family Gallery, the viewer will encounter a series of 3 display areas that's populated by robotic black figures that seem to have emerged from the past or perhaps from the future. Those 2 concepts collide in this work. There's a central display area that I'm calling the settee, and in this settee is a field of obsidian, and on that field of obsidian are 6 of the 8 automata performing a ritual of a resurrection. The obsidian sort of fulfills the role of the natural element in the space, doing the sort of energetic work that a plant might do in another setting. Fortuna of the title is overseeing the proceedings and offering missives, fortunes, non sequiturs in the form of little paper slips or absolutions for the visitor. My history with San Francisco is kind of informed by, a kind of love, for the beauty of the place. And I've failed to kind of understand its transformations over the last couple of decades. And I think one of those changes is the housing crisis and the sort of depopulation of the city, that there are fewer and fewer Black people in a population that seemed from the Second World War on to be, somewhat thriving, or at least present. It's interesting to sort of engage with this version of technology in a location that has so much invested in new technology. It's a bit of a struggle to sort of feel like the city is thriving in the way that it could. So for me, I felt I needed to learn the language of the place that I've been engaging with, instead of what I had been doing was thinking about what was lost. Making a large public installation that lives in the space for a long period of time means that it's going to encounter, many different types of people, different groups. Everybody's going to bring their reaction to the piece into the space, and I think that's beautiful. I think the one thing that I know that I can provide, even if the work doesn't make sense, is I can provide a place to sit, which is one of my primary goals as an artist, is to just make you comfortable.
I found that so fascinating. So thank you to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. That beautiful and haunting dreamscape and fantasy space that has been created using technology and referencing the technology that lives in that area, as they are, San Francisco and Silicon Valley folks are referenced as leaders in that space. And so to bring this art installation into that area and tell this story, I really just found both beautiful, sad, and a little terrifying, because certainly seeing the resurrection animated was just like, wow, like the mind of Kara Walker is just dynamic, beautiful, haunting. And that's what this episode is about, Dreamscapes and Fantasies. Walker shows us that fantasies can be both beautiful and terrifying. They can expose what we would rather forget. And I love that she presents the historical pieces of inspiration that San Francisco at one point seemed like a thriving space for Black people, but there seems to be some population decline, and that could be for many reasons. And her art brought that narrative into focus. So from her dream nightmare landscapes, we're going to move on to a very different kind of world, one that is filled with tenderness, wonder, and a little bit of quiet magic. So let me say this right. Hayao Miyazaki. Hayao Miyazaki, the legendary animator. And we're going to work on that by the end of this, so hopefully we can pronounce that correctly, is a legendary animator and co-founder of Studio Ghibli, which builds entire dreamscapes in film. So those who are into anime, which I am, this portion of artistry presentation is for you. Think of Spirited Away, where a bathhouse for spirits becomes the stage for courage and transformation. Or My Neighbor Totoro, where children escape grief through encounters with forest spirits. His fantasies aren't just escapes, they're lessons in empathy, resilience, and care for the natural world. Miyazaki shows us that the fantasy can be deeply human. Fantasies can be deeply human. Let's center on that and play a short video so that we learn a bit more about Miyazaki.
A master of Japanese animation, Hayao Miyazaki embodies a rare singularity, that of an artist who constantly renews himself. Born in 1941 in Tokyo, in a Japan still scarred by war, Miyazaki grew up in a family tied to the aeronautics industry, caught between the shadows of the past and a fascination with flight. This dual heritage, trauma and dream, runs through his entire body of work. Although he graduated in political science, he entered the world of animation through the side door at Toei, where he sharpened his eye and his artisan's patience. Very early on, he stood out for a rare obsession, giving life to invisible worlds, blending poetry, ecology, and universal fable. In 1985, he co-founded Studio Ghibli with Isao Takahata. It would become the birthplace of his timeless universes: My Neighbor Totoro, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, the latter winning the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature and the Golden Bear in Berlin, propelling Japanese animation to the rank of global art. Today, Studio Ghibli employs around 190 people and is valued at nearly $245 million, a rare figure for an independent animation studio. The economic footprint of Miyazaki's films is as striking as their artistic impact. Spirited Away alone grossed over $275 million worldwide, including 31.7 billion yen in Japan, making it the country's highest-grossing film of all time for nearly 2 decades. Howl's Moving Castle followed with about $235 million, Ponyo with $199 million, and Princess Mononoke with $159 million. These box office triumphs have turned Ghibli into one of Japan's strongest cultural exports, while in 2024, the studio reported a 43% surge in net profit, underscoring the enduring power of its catalog. Each of Miyazaki's films bears the same imprint: an infinite tenderness for childhood, a questioning of destructive modernity, and an almost mystical quest for harmony between humans and nature. Unlike the Hollywood giants, Miyazaki never pursued technological escalation. His credo, hand-drawing, slowness, rigor. Where Pixar bet on software, Ghibli relied on the gesture, the purity of the line, and raw emotion. His reputation as a demanding perfectionist, sometimes hot-tempered, was coupled with an almost spiritual aura. For his teams as for his audiences, Miyazaki is less a director than a guide. The call of the pencil makes the prosperous artist forget the weight of age. In 2023, Miyazaki once again astonished audiences with The Boy and the Heron, hailed as a testamentary masterpiece. Yet nothing suggests it will be his last film. At 82, this creator embodies a rare fidelity to vocation, to create as long as he breathes. His legacy goes beyond his films. It lies in this life lesson addressed to all artists, to keep searching, doubting, reinventing, and reimagining oneself. Studio Ghibli's economic might only amplifies this truth. Miyazaki has proven that imagination, when nurtured with rigor, can build not just worlds of dreams, but also one of Japan's most enduring cultural empires.
基本的に子供たちにこの世は生きるに値するんだっていうことを伝えるのが自分たちの仕事の根幹になければいけないというふうに思ってきました。それは今も変わっていません。
Thanks to TV Abraham for that wonderful presentation about Miyazaki. So from Dolly's surreal clocks that we learned about, to Walker's shadow worlds, to Miyazaki's enchanted forests, these artists remind us that dreamscapes take many forms. Some disturb, some comfort, some soothe. Together, they reveal that fantasy isn't about avoiding reality, it's about reshaping it. And that brings me a lot of joy. It makes me a little giddy, actually. It's about questioning it and sometimes softening its edges so that we can imagine something more. And that, I think, is the power of dreamscapes and fantasies. So as we are closing at least the conversation around dreamscapes and fantasies out, I wandered again on my way home on the train, thinking about the earlier poem of the shadows and the stars and the colors and the chords and the visions and haunting and healing, and then wrote this next set of words. Again, this is a poem that is not even titled. I just was sketching in my artist book on the train. So dreams are not escapes. They are seeds, fragile, glowing, waiting. We plant them when we dare to imagine. We water them when we speak them out loud. And then one day, when the world is ready, they bloom into reality. And that is dreamscapes and fantasies. So before I go, I want to ensure that I take care of a little business on the digital equity, digital inclusion, digital opportunity, digital growth, whatever you're calling yourself these days in that space, since that's the space that I occupy. I want to make sure that everyone is aware that October 6th through the 10th is Digital Inclusion Week. It is a week-long celebration, acknowledgement, and awareness campaign building around all things digital inclusion. It was started by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, NDIA for short, and organizations and entities across the globe will be celebrating and building awareness around digital inclusion for that week, October 6th through October the 10th. In Cook County, where I reside and work, we have over 100 events that will be happening during that week. We did a call and set a goal for 100 events, and we've beat our goal. I'm so excited to announce that we beat the goal, and we will have over 100 events happening during that week. So if you are in Cook County or wherever you live, check in with your local library, check in with your offices of broadband or any county office that is doing similar work and support the week. You yourself can stand up your own event for Digital Inclusion Week. It doesn't have to be something large. You can start do a podcast episode. You can print out some flyers about internet safety and take it to your kids' school. You can go to every meeting that you attend in the week and make sure people are aware of resources that are available at the library. It takes every hand, every heart, every head to spread the word about digital inclusion so that we can build our ecosystem and we can collectively continue to advocate for resources, because we who do this work know that the digital divide is still alive. It is a real thing and it is growing even wider as time goes on. Technology moves very fast. Bad policy around technology moves even faster. So if we want to be equitable in our opportunities for people and ensure that no one is left behind technologically speaking, and that they have access to the tools and the resources to do whatever it is they want to do with it, we use this week, and in-house at the county we say this is our Super Bowl. So we want to show up in a big way and show out in a big way. And we are encouraging you out there listening to this podcast. If you are unaware of Digital Inclusion Week, we encourage you to tap in wherever you are in the world, because it's such important work. It's such an important time for this work. And we need you to help us to spread the word. Similarly, during that week, on the Tuesday, October the 7th, in Cook County, we are hosting our inaugural Digital Equity Learning Symposium. This has been a dream of mine and was on my vision board in my office to host a learning symposium for the county, bringing all of our practitioners and advocates and interested ecosystem partners together in one space so that we can co-design and share and learn and network and build. And that is happening on Tuesday, October 7th. We will be at Malcolm X College in the city of Chicago. Program starts at 9 o'clock. Doors open at 8 o'clock for registration. There will be breakfast. It's free for you to attend. And we will also be doing a equipment collection. So if you are around Malcolm X College in Chicago on Tuesday the 7th, and you have some extra cords or some computers or some tablets or any kind of electronical equipment that you want to get rid of, it's been sitting around in the corner, you got some clothes on top of it, we have partnered with our friends at PCs for People, and we will be accepting equipment donations that morning from 8 to 9 a.m. So you can drop it off on your way into the office. And then lastly, we are so excited to welcome net inclusion to the Chicago and Cook County area in February of 2026. So net inclusion is the largest national conference of digital inclusion practitioners, advocates, etc. And we come together and we learn a lot from each other. There's wonderful sessions and all types of interesting opportunities to engage and learn more about this work. And Net Inclusion 2026 will be in Chicago in February 2026. Yes, it might be a little cold, but we have big, warm hearts in Chicago. So we're going to welcome you into those spaces and we're going to have a great time. So tickets and registrations are open. They just closed out the call for speakers, so those hopefully will be announced very soon. It's going to be an amazing opportunity to connect, and we are looking forward to seeing you and welcoming you next year here in the Chicagoland area. Please come join, come connect with me. I want to connect with you. I submitted a speaker request, so hopefully my session gets selected. So I think that's all that I have for you today. I think it's been a pretty good open mic, open site, and our format will continue to evolve. You may see 2 more artists. You may see 1 artist and some stories. You may see me live somewhere. We are really endeavoring to keep this space interesting, and having virtual artistic showcases shared with these beautiful themes that have been selected for us so that we can continue to be connected. We know that art is transformative, and I really do hope that there was something said or shared today that you found valuable, that you learned, and that you move into your evening feeling better because of this artistic exposure and opportunity. And so I will say good night to you. This has been the September episode of Open Mic, Open Site. Our next open mic, open site, and I need to go to my calendar real quick to make sure I get the date right because I don't want to say the date wrong. But our next open mic, open site for October will be the last Wednesday of October, and that date is October the 29th, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on the CollabARTive Community YouTube, live on my LinkedIn, and maybe live from the Instagram. We'll see. And we'll see you next time on Open Mic, Open Site. Have a good night.